Hey guys, welcome to Real Crusades History. Cecilia Holland wrote a novel about Emperor Frederick II Hohenstaufen entitled Antichrist. This title parodies the propaganda promoted about Frederick during his lifetime by his political enemies, which has often stuck in popular culture. Today, many people still believe that Frederick II was indifferent to Christianity, sympathetic to Islam, fundamentally hostile to the papacy, and intent on creating a new world order centered around a secular government. In fact, medieval historians will tell you such ideas are nothing more than reimagining Frederick as a modern ruler. The true Frederick was a much more traditional medieval monarch than has often been realized. In this video, we'll debunk some of the myths surrounding the fascinating Emperor Frederick II. Myth number 1. Frederick II was insincere in his Christianity and only paid lip service to the religious institutions of his day. He was unusually tolerant of Jews and Muslims. False. Christopher Tyerman, author of God's War, states that Frederick's efforts to prosecute his crusade exposed an ambition inexplicable without a conventional religious purpose. Frederick was as sincere in his religious faith as most rulers of the period. According to David Abulafia, Frederick viewed heresy as treason and took the crime as seriously as other Christian kings. The idea that Frederick was unusually tolerant of Muslims and Jews stems from the fact that Muslim and Jewish intellectuals were active at Frederick's court in Sicily, and the fact that he kept Saracen soldiers in his army. But neither of these are surprising. In fact, the same can be said of all the Norman kings of Sicily, and indeed Frederick expected any Muslims or Jews attaining high status within his kingdom to convert to Christianity. Myth number 2. Frederick was an insincere crusader. He only led an expedition to the Holy Land to appease public opinion. False. Tyerman writes, Frederick II was no less sincere in his crusading ambition than Richard the Lionheart. Frederick's crusade was incredibly costly and risky, yet he insisted on leading it personally. Abulafia writes that the emperor aimed to work for God, the church, and the empire, and he was deeply conscious of his own subordination to God himself. Myth number 3. Frederick's reconquest of Jerusalem was largely meaningless. False. Christopher Tyerman debunks this myth. However controversial, the restoration of Jerusalem to Christian occupation lasted for 15 years. There is evidence that it benefited economically from a revived pilgrim trade. At least one new holy site was constructed, the Koaniculum on Mount Zion, the reputed site of the Last Supper. A well-funded, staffed, and equipped scriptorium seems to have been established in the Holy City, and large sums of money expended on its walls. Jerusalem's recovery in 1229 was a significant actual as well as symbolic achievement in the context of the emotions, blood, and treasure so profligately expended on it since 1187. This leads us to myth number 4. Although Frederick II restored Jerusalem, his agreement with Sultan Al-Kamil meant that the Christians could not refortify the city walls, thus leaving it indefensible. False. Abulafia answers this one. The Tower of David was strengthened. The city's fortifications were gradually restored. Myth number 5. Frederick expressed admiration for Islam while in Jerusalem. The comments of some Muslim authors from the period, which depict the Emperor Frederick as mocking his own religion and endorsing Islam, have led some today to believe that Frederick actually behaved this way while in Jerusalem. What most people don't know is that Muslim authors very often depicted Christian rulers this way, such as the Norman kings of Sicily. This is because, as Abulafia points out, medieval Muslims found it hard to place rulers who were, in a practical way, fairly respectful toward Islam. In other words, these Muslims interpreted pragmatic attitudes towards Muslim subjects as impiety in Christian rulers. However, it was not uncommon for Christian rulers who had Muslims living in their territories to protect them if they showed loyalty. In one of my previous videos, I described how James I of Aragon protected the rights of his Muslim subjects, so long as they gave him their allegiance. Also, Crusader lords like Baldwin I of Jerusalem or Tancred of Antioch forbade Christians from vandalizing the mosques of their Muslim subjects. Myth number 6. Frederick II was defiant of papal rule and eager to create a secular world order. False. Frederick's disagreements with some of the popes of his era have been inflated to cause some to believe that he despised the papacy itself. Plenty of medieval rulers squabbled with the popes. That didn't mean they fundamentally questioned the authenticity of the papacy. Once again, we'll hear from Abulafia. He issued a decree, the Constitutio in Basilica Beati Pietri, in celebration of his imperial coronation, which guaranteed to the full the liberties of the Church. Its importance lies in the fact that it was issued at the coronation as the first act of the new emperor, and its unmistakable message was concord between papacy and empire. Frederick's conflict with Pope Gregory IX is often remembered, while his good relations with Pope Honorius III are often overlooked. Frederick's disagreements with Gregory IX mainly stemmed from he and the Pope's divergent political views, especially in regards to the political role of the papacy. Frederick insisted the Pope had a role as spiritual father, while Frederick himself was to act as secular sovereign, while Gregory envisioned the emperor as a vassal to the papacy in Rome. This video should dispel some of the myths surrounding Emperor Frederick II Hohenstaufen and the Sixth Crusade. The Sixth Crusade must be viewed as a triumph for Christendom, which at the time was dramatic and indicative of potential recovery for the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Squabbles between the emperor's forces and the native baronage of Jerusalem would weaken this recovery, and can perhaps even be viewed as the root of the ultimate decline of the Crusader states in the second half of the 13th century. However, at the time of the Sixth Crusade, none of that was apparent. Instead, Islam, once again deeply divided by conflicts between Egypt and Damascus, was forced to hand over Jerusalem and many of the territories lost to Saladin. In many respects, the Sixth Crusade can be viewed as resuming and adding to the work of the Third Crusade, which recovered the Palestinian coast for Christendom. Frederick II can be viewed as a triumphant and sincere crusader. His commitment to the War of the Cross was as pious and serious as the likes of Godfrey of Bouillon or Louis IX of France. Though Frederick lived to see much of the work of his crusade undone by the fall of Jerusalem in 1244, he never forgot his holy war for Christ. When Frederick's porphyry tomb was opened in 1782, his body was found to be wearing on the left shoulder his crusader's cross.